Hey everybody, today I get to talk to you again about one of the books that I really love, and I want to introduce it to you by talking about the power of silence. I got to think about this relatively recently, well, within the last decade at least, when I was watching The Last Jedi. And yeah, it's been a while because I saw that in theaters, which means that was all the way back before the pandemic, which is years ago. It feels more recent than that. At any rate, spoilers ahead for The Last Jedi. So if you haven't seen that movie, skip ahead to this point. Towards the end of The Last Jedi, one character allows most of the rest of the Resistance to escape by piloting her ship into a Star Destroyer, which was controlling the fleet that was after them. And we all know, right, that without atmosphere or some sort of medium to carry sound, you don't have sound. But we're also used to seeing like explosions in space. It's a thing, right? That's why this particular moment was so powerful. In a packed theater full of people watching this for the very first time, moving from what a typical movie experience to sudden and complete absence of sound, that utter stillness was sensational. It was completely enthralling. That was, I think, the best moment in the movie. And it was a movie I kind of liked. Not perfect. There were definitely some issues that I had with it, and I think a lot of people did. But overall, I think I enjoyed the movie. That particular moment really stood out, and that's why, because we're used to having a lot of sound all around us. Another moment similar to that, another use of silence, is from a song from when I was much younger, the song Super Vixen, released by the band Garbage in 1995. It starts out like this. Now that little hitch in the sound actually came around by accident. As the band was mixing the music together, there were two guitar parts that were supposed to be layered and blend one into the other. But there was some kind of problem with their tape, and it would just hiccup there instead of blending the sounds together. And as a result, it had this beat of just hesitation, this pause, but almost not intentional, or obviously not intentional, but it doesn't even feel intentional. It just feels like a hitch. And the band decided, actually, we kind of like that. And so not only did they keep it at that part, but they actually reused that sample of the sound as it went there. And they incorporated that hitch into other places in the song as well. I think it's one of the iconic songs of the 90s, and I think that's because that's one of the iconic sounds. That brings me to the book that I want to talk about, which is Shaun Tan's The Arrival. You might be thinking, okay, it's a book. It is silent. But in this case, we're not talking about silence just in the auditory sense. There's definitely something to the quiet, the intense quiet of getting pulled into a story and sort of losing touch with all the sound that's around you. But in this case, it is a stillness that occurs without words, because this story doesn't have any. So there are multiple pages that work like that, where there are the small pictures just one after another, but then some of them also work like this. You have pictures of different sizes. That gives you a sense more of scale sometimes, or of relative importance in other places in the story. So you don't have what you're used to carry you through this story. And it creates an immediate sense of disorientation. Like, wait, where are the words? And that's important. That is a deliberate choice, obviously, by the author-artist. But it connects with the story because this is a story of an immigrant. As you go through the story, you see that his home has become unsafe for him and his family. He has a wife and a daughter. And so they decide that they are going to leave and go somewhere else. And he goes ahead of them. He leaves first to sort of set things up in their new home. And all of this is told just through the pictures. That's it. That's all you get. He's coming in here. It's obviously very unfamiliar to him. None of it seems to make any sense. And this happens not even from the very first page, but from the cover. The stylistic choices made by the author-artist Shaun Tan help to underscore this sense of, I'm not stupid, I'm not crazy, but this doesn't make any sense. So you have the use of the sepia tone. All of it is monochromatic, but there are different shades. The sepia tone kind of gives it an old-fashioned look, like we think of as old-fashioned photos or old photos. And in some cases, there are, like here, between these two pages, you can see more of a gold sepia tone, and this one more in black and white. So there is some change slightly to the colors, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. There's also an interesting contrast in the juxtaposition of the realistic art style with the use of fantastic objects and creatures. And again, we can see this right here on the cover. So we have, it just looks like almost a photograph, especially with this border that it's given, and of course, that sort of old-timey brown tone to it. And then we got this man here. He's, carrying a suitcase, wearing a suit, wearing a hat. And then we got this little guy. I have no idea what that is. And you're not supposed to. So you have this juxtaposition between the familiar and the unfamiliar. And especially as you can see, our friend there, the main character, looking at this, what is it? And he's peering at it. There's confusion there. And that also is another element that's really important in this story. The use of expression, gesture, facial expression, and positioning to help communicate what's going on. And of course, that also connects to the experience of someone who is unfamiliar with a new language and a new way of doing things. And all of this creates this, okay, I have some idea of what's going on, but there's a lot that I don't understand. Additionally, the focus on expression and gesture helps us to our entry point into the story is what's going on with this character internally, emotionally. There is an emotional impact to this story that it wouldn't otherwise have. And it's because we're entering the story through the expression and gestures of the main character. Even though maybe a lot of us have not had, well, certainly haven't had this exact experience, given the use of the fantastic creatures and this amazing world building that's been created just through the artwork. But all of these emotions are ones that we've experienced. The separation. Maybe we haven't left our family behind as we go to a distant land, but we've been separated from people that we care about, even temporarily. And the grief and the loneliness that comes with that, the worry about how they're doing, knowing that they're worrying about us too. Confusion, frustration when you feel like you ought to understand and you just don't get it. Uncertainty, not being sure about what to do next and not wanting to screw things up. All of those are things that we can relate to. And so we empathize with this main character. And as he moves forward and things begin to make sense and he starts being able to connect with the other people who help him in this story, the sense of realization of this sudden understanding of not understanding it, and then all of a sudden it clicks and you get it. We've experienced that as well. The relief that comes from that. The confirmation that, no, actually, we really aren't stupid. We haven't been delusional this whole time. That sense that it's going to be okay. To some degree, again, lesser or greater, we've all experienced that as well. And I would say most importantly, as the story continues, is connection. That's something that it emphasizes over and over again. The end flaps have all of these people here. I'm trying to think. I don't know if they are characters that we see on the pages. I don't recognize any of them stand up, but they may be just, in passing. As we go through, our main character, enters the foreign land, his new home, and is given these sorts of papers for who he is and permission to be there. And I also do want to point out that as we go through and we see, there is actually text here, like if we can see right here, but all of it is artistically represented. It makes me curious if the artist actually came up with, this is what this means, and here's how it's represented, and here's the way this language works, or if it's all just kind of made up on the spot. Very curious, because I know that sometimes people do make up languages. My brother did. My younger brothers, they made up a language. I never got to be in on that. It's okay though. I still love you. And then we also see his interactions with some of the other people who are there. So he's looking at his book, trying to figure out what he's supposed to do or how to say something. I'm guessing, although it's hard to tell, that the book goes from one language to another. And so he looks up and you can see the hand there. And so it's somebody here who can help him. And so they talk, and it looks like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to this guy, but we see down here that lifted finger, the expression. We get the idea, aha, I got it, I can help you. And that comes, the use of expression again, comes throughout in several cases. We also get to see, as he interacts with some of the other people who are new there, they share some of their own experiences as well. So here, he shows his papers, and this woman, me too, she pulls out hers, but this is a paper of someone who is not here, because this is not the same woman. So she looks, and she's also thinking about someone else, someone she's been separated from that presumably she hopes to be reunited with. Something I want to point out to you here is the change in the background from this page over to here. And that indicates that we're no longer, we zoom in here from this woman, and she's holding the paper with the picture on it, to the picture, to the person in the picture. And so that zooming in tells us we're going somewhere else, maybe even somewhen else. And then the shift in the background is when we're in that other story. We see this a number of times. The shift in the background to like a gray or sometimes a tan indicates a shift in place, I think. Because some of the other stories we see, in this case, we see him again connecting with someone else who's able to help him. And he draws a picture, the houses, and there's a tentacle overhead. This was some of the danger that he faced. And we also saw that this connects back to the beginning of the story, where we see that the tentacle with the spikes on it. And they're leaving. And so he draws the danger that they were leaving from. And this man, again, pointing to myself, we then zoom in. We see the man, and then we get closer to his face, to his eye, and then again we see the flames as though he's remembering this is what happened to him. And once again, in this 2-page spread, we have a change in the background. So here, this is actually a kind of terrifying picture. We have people getting sucked up off the ground by these giant hoses of some sort, as others are trying to run away. And so this seems to be, the darker background seems to indicate that this is not that he's thinking about somewhere else at the same time, but this is a memory rather than an imagination. So all of these artistic choices are deliberate on the part of the creator, and they're clues, because none of this is spelled out. All of this is just me guessing based on what I see on the page. And again, it's a way that the artist has chosen to make this book kind of an interactive experience. None of this is explained to you. I'm just guessing. And the fact that I can think about it in this way makes me more invested in looking at these details and piecing it together like a puzzle and thinking it through and creating meaning with the author-artist who created this story. It's participatory in a way that every story is, but more so in this case. And that's part of what makes this book so enjoyable, because I get to be more involved in putting the story together. As our protagonist continues, he makes more connections with the people in this new land, and things start making sense to him. He begins to experience not just struggle, but through the struggle, begins to experience success. He begins to understand the language as he's looking at some of the things that are up there, and he can explain it to some other people as well. Asking questions, getting answers. He again continues to share stories with the people he meets. And we also see this little guy, this little creature that we saw on the front, shows up throughout his journey. Seems to be some kind of companion. What is it? I don't know. It doesn't seem to speak to him. It seems to be some kind of animal. We also see that he writes, and then he folds up his writing into a crane and puts it in an envelope, seals it, puts a stamp on it, and he sends it away. Now again, what's he doing? We can guess that this is not a bill that he is paying. This is something that he is sending to someone. It has meaning to it. He is being creative and crafty. He is choosing to do this. So that seems to indicate that would be my guess, that it's going to his family. Then we have this indicating the change in seasons, time passing. And then we have this. He looks over, and there's another letter. He opens it up, and you can guess that this is not simply a return to sender or not enough postage type thing. Because again, of the expression, he is not frustrated or annoyed, as you would be if you're just like, it just came back. But he smiles, and then he looks out, and we can see the light from the window on his face. He sees something up in the sky, and he runs toward it. He shouts. We see female faces. He drops his suitcase. He drops his hat, the items that have been with him this whole time. And then we see another 2-page spread. I don't know if you can see the tiny, tiny footprints and 3 figures in a group. But that's not the end of the story. We get another chapter, again with the passage of time. More folded toys, pictures drawn, a family photograph. And we see that this family has begun putting their life together in their new home. But instead, now we begin to follow the daughter. She runs out of the house, and our little animal companion goes with her. Out into this strange city. She doesn't seem to be bothered by it. I mean, in fairness, she's a kid. A lot of stuff is new to her because, she doesn't have as much experience as the adults do. So she's used to things being new and not always making sense. And so as the story winds to a close, she sees someone who has a paper and is looking around again with the expression. Notice the eyebrows, that uncertainty. That's something we've seen before. And so she holds out her hand. They look at the paper together. And the little girl points the way. What I like about this is we do see that it moves from struggle to success to responsibility. But it was the father who experienced that struggle, who built his own success, who bears that responsibility to hand it on to others. And we did see that he was making this an opportunity for his family. But it doesn't stop there. The responsibility continues, and we see that in the daughter's interaction. And that is what causes this story to have such a hopeful conclusion. It's not just about us or the people who are closest to us. We are connected to everyone. And I think that's part of what makes this story so special. This is not a story about me. These are not my family members. This is not my experience. But because we have that additional responsibility, that sense of community, that connects it to those who aren't there. It goes beyond just ourselves and our immediate connected people, our family, whether that's biological, chosen, or both. We have a responsibility to others as well. And enacting that responsibility and accepting that help from others, that's what builds a lasting connection, a culture, and a society. So if you get a chance at your local library, try to see if you can find Sean Tan's The Arrival, because it is an absolutely wonderful, fabulous book, and you should check it out. Thanks for listening. Bye.